My name is Andreas Udbye. I'm from Norway originally. Live in University Place, but I'm born and raised in Norway. I came as a student, so I left Norway in 1980 to become a student at PLU, Pacific Lutheran University. And always wanted to do that, to spend at least a year in America. That was the original plan when I was 20 years old. But I got a scholarship to go to PLU for 1 year, and that, it's a bird in the hand, so I decided to do that. And came here in August of 1980, the first time. I'm a little bit of an accidental immigrant, so to speak, because I applied to a 1-year scholarship called through the Norway America Association. It was a 1-year, basically full ride at PLU, but it said Washington. So I was, until just a month before departure, I knew about this for half a year in advance. I was going to go to the States, but I thought it was going to be Washington, D.C. So I booked my airline tickets with Scandinavian Airlines at the time, going to Washington, D.C. And then a friend of mine looked at it and said, Andreas, we're going to study in the States. And I said, it's in Washington. But he saw that Tacoma word before preceding Washington. So he says, I hate to sort of bring this up to you, but it's actually Tacoma, Washington. That's on the other side of the country. It's the other Washington. So I then, ended up, of course, changing my tickets and all that. So I had no idea where Tacoma was. I had no idea what PLU was. So I was sort of stumbling into it. Quite of a culture shock, of course. Although PLU is founded on sort of Scandinavian. They had Scandinavian roots there, and they have that the Lutheran roots that I was used to in terms of from that sort of religious standpoint. So it felt sort of at home in many ways, And so the transition wasn't that bad. It wasn't bad. It was, it's a very friendly reception. I think it still is, 43 years later. I think students here are received in a friendly manner, a friendly way. That was my impression of it at the time, that people were really receiving. So it was a nice experience that first year. In my case, I had wanderlust. I really wanted to travel and get that experience. Sort of being uncommitted to it, the first year. Like I said, I got a 1-year scholarship, and I was fine with that. I was going to go back to business school in Norway afterwards. That was my plan. And of course, life happened, with, I can tell you more about that. The first fall of 1980, I started dating a local girl who was also a PLU student. And the rest of the story, of course, college is sort of where a lot of people meet their future, spouses and partners and so forth. So we married, and right after I graduated in 83. So I decided back in 81, after 1 year at PLU, that I really like it here. It's friendly, like I said, it's welcoming. Got 2 more years to finish PLU and get my bachelor's degree. Then we actually moved back to Norway in 83 and married over there. I had to marry over there on sort of a short term, on 6 weeks notice, because she needed a residency permit. And to be married, if you're married, you get that the same as over here. Yeah, so for me, after I graduated from PLU, went back into the private sector in Norway for 3 years. Came back to UW Seattle for a master's degree there for a couple of years, and then worked in Seattle for 10 years in transportation distribution, ocean transportation. So, and then back to Norway again for 5 years, and again worked in distribution, wholesale trade, and came back in 2001. Realized, and actually that's a funny little story, because I looked at the sunset here. We're visiting my in-laws in University Place in 2000, and wasn't really that happy back in Norway. The toddlers, the boys were toddlers, and looked at a beautiful sunset, I remember, in July of 2000. I said, just made a decision right there. Just we're coming back. It's like it split. I mean, I could have gone totally different direction. I just looked at it and said, no, we're coming back. And so 9 months later, then we were back in Tacoma again. I left my parents as a 20-year-old, and some tear-filled farewells there. And I know that when I told them the second time, my family back in 2000, that I'm not gonna work in the family firm, I'm leaving for good. That was a major blow, probably. But they said right away, when I said it to them, when I told them that we're going back, they both said we knew it. So they had a sense that I was really drawn back to the States. There's a feeling here of freedom that's hard to beat. There's more conformity or conformism in Europe, or in Northern Europe, probably. Expectations and things that you're supposed to do and you can't do and so forth. So there's here, in theory anyway, you can do pretty much anything. You can shape your own life and your own lifestyle. The early days, the student days, and 10 years in Seattle in the 80s and 90s, didn't become a citizen at that time. You do get a green card, so in some ways, when you're married, and that was maybe the key for me, it's a formality. I mean, you still have to go through the process of getting your residency, your permanent residency. In 2004, I figured, well, 19 years ago, why live here permanently and not have, the citizenship rights, that being naturalized and becoming a U.S. citizen. So again, it's a formality, because with a green card in your pocket, I think you have to live here for 5 years, maybe, or 3 years or something like that, and then you apply for it. So it's a process that I think makes sense to do it. I did lose my Norwegian citizenship then at that point, because Norway doesn't allow dual citizenship. At that time they didn't. So then I was American citizen. And when I came back here in 2001, of course, my job was in Tacoma, downtown. And so from a job standpoint, of course, we're doing trade promotion and export-import management and what have you. Then I was pretty active on both the sister city committees, but not the Norwegian one, the Chinese and the Taiwanese ones. So I was that had to do with some of the trade connections and what we were doing with international relations there with Asia, and also in the World Affairs Council, which again really didn't have much to do with Norway in particular, but just because I've always been interested in international matters. So that was then I ran the World Trade Center in Tacoma, so sort of capitalizing on my transportation trade experience. So did that for 7 years until 2008, and that's the time when I became interested in the educational sector. I thought, I thought I was pretty good at giving seminars and presentations and all that. So, and I was still in my 40s, so I thought, well, maybe I want to get my my PhD at that point before it's too late. So it probably was too late, but so I got my doctorate then in supply chain management and system science, done at Portland State University in 2014, just 9 years ago. So I've been teaching now for about full-time for about 10 years, 11 years altogether. Well, immigrants in Tacoma, we're all very different. I think some, like I said, came because of more urgency or need or desperation, perhaps. So there's that category, and others came mostly because of maybe circumstances or just sheer little bit randomness. I mean, students staying, maybe workers. So we're all coming at it from a different standpoint. I think Americans are still, I mean, we're a melting pot. I mean, we're multicultural, so we're more accepting, I think, of people's ethnic backgrounds, dialects, accents, and all that. Tacoma is surprisingly diverse actually in many ways. I mean, it's kind of a hard scrabble town. You went through the logging and the shipyard period way back with the development of the port and the tide flats. Right now, it's actually a very fascinating city, located on the water there with a hill, and has this sort of eclectic mixture of old and new. So you come to Tacoma now, you see, well, of course, the museums, the Car Museum, the Arts Museum, the Washington State Historical Museum and so forth, the Glass Museum and all those. They're attractions right there. But Point Defiance Park, so it's a beautiful location here. So if you're not looking for this sort of mega city experience, it's more like a medium city experience, which is quite satisfying. So yeah, I'd say and welcoming for everybody, I think.